And a few words from our TA folks from Dell. So we'll get started on that, and you guys can hopefully catch your team up if there's anyone else that's missing so far. So great, I want to welcome everyone again and say Happy New Year. I want to start off by maybe just going around if anyone wants to volunteer their New Year's resolution. See Judy shaking her head no, she doesn't want to share what her resolution is. Anyone? We have it's a good way to test the mics to make sure that we're all ready. Anyone? Lori, you must have resolved to be done for negotiation in February. Yeah? Make sure these work.
There you go. Good.
One of my New Year's resolutions is to become parent ambassador.
Very nice. Anyone else want to share? Everyone's very private about the resolutions. That's okay. Who has kept the resolution after 5 days? I shouldn't raise my hand, I didn't. I was trying to eat healthy, and I had a pierogi yesterday. So I love all the Russian food here in the area. So I already failed. Hopefully you guys are better off than I am. All right, so I want to go around the room. I see some new faces and some familiar faces. It has been a while. So we'll start off with facilitators. Actually, I see, Heather, you don't have a mic. So this weekend, we'll have myself, Tina.
Hi, and I'm with you for my second tour of duty. I'm Heather Gann.
All right, so she'll be with us today and tomorrow. Zane is already in the other room setting up, so we'll have Zane. He'll mostly be helping with the breakouts. And then Hallie's going to come hopefully tomorrow. We had a blizzard in Boston, so we had our substitute come in, so we're really lucky to have Heather here today. All right, let's go around the room, and everyone, can you please state your name and whether or not you're a voting member. So we'll start here, Senator.
I'm Michelle Butler-Miles, Center Director, and yes, I can vote.
Rachel Atchison, and yes, I'm a voting member.
Hillary Prentice, and yes, voting member.
Janet Valella, and voting member.
Nicole Sohn, voting member.
Sandy Nelson, voting member.
We'll do Head Start ECAP next.
Katie Warren, and as you can see from our numbers at the moment, we are all voting members.
Katie Levenhagen.
Karen Matson.
Pam Grigsby Jones.
Thank you, Head Start ECAP. We'll move to parents.
Kevin Rutherford, voting member.
Kelsey Garcia, voting member.
Elliot Dewey, not a voting member.
Christina Cummins, voting member.
Gabriella, voting member.
Krista Murray, non-voting member.
Cherise Rhodes, voting member.
Thank you, parents. Licensing team.
Judy Bunkelman, voting member. We're all voting members. Debbie Groff, Travis Hansen, Karen Christensen, Brenda Martinez, Eva Freeman, Yvonne Lewis, just come in.
Thank you.
Yes, and we will have somebody else join us.
Okay, great. And family home. You guys are up. Another person. Great.
Kat McGonigal, voting member. Carol Gibbs, voting member.
Tyler Bass. I'm going to be a voting member today. We'll send.
Yep. And we'll introduce our Dell Tech Writers and Dell Tech TA.
Debbie O'Neill. Wow, that's really loud. Good morning.
And good morning, I'm Michelle Roberts.
Janet Reese.
Good morning, Ann Radcliffe.
Good morning, Happy New Year, Elizabeth Veronica.
Good morning, I'm Tyler Farmer.
All right. that's everyone. We'll also have Angela shortly. So Angela and Michelle will be here as our professional development TA guest of honor. Okay, so we'll jump in then to our PowerPoint, which is really just to give you an update of where we are. Then we'll take a look at all of the paper that's on your tables. We'll make sure that you understand what's in front of you, and then how we'll conduct this weekend. All right, so I'll start with updates, how this weekend will work, and as I mentioned, review the documents. All right, so we want to start off, Happy New Year, happy celebration time for not just the new year, but all of the hard work you've done. We did the full calculation of where you are. You guys are 77% of the way through. So congratulations for that. Okay, so the breakdown of that is that you've done 75 full sections that have reached full consensus, and then 13 sections that have reached partial consensus. So that means some subsections are either tabled or TA or still in queue. All right, so here's the full breakdown. In queue, we still have 17 full sections left. There's 1 still for tech writers, 5 in queue for TA resolution, 3 tabled. I really want to point out the 3 tabled because I feel like throughout the past few months, we feel like we tabled a lot of stuff, but actually in terms of section level, there's only 3. And then partial consensus, we have 13 full sections. All right, and so I wanted to break down for you the partial consensus. So I mentioned there's 13 of them, but within them there are subsections, right? So some sections you guys had consensus on larger portions, and some have less. So there may be one section that has 3 that need something, one that just has 1. So this is the breakdown of the 13. You have 1 in queue for consensus, 3 for Dell Tech writers. This is where there's actually, if you break it down, 4 tabled, and 5 in queue for TA resolution. So all that to say, you have gotten really far, done a lot of great work, still have a lot of, at the subsection level, a lot of work to do, and we'll walk you through that. And our goal this weekend is to finish professional development, as you probably know. Okay, this is just a reminder, you still have your inboxes. And then you also receive public comments about professional development. So we had new ones that came in when we reopened the public comment, and then this is just a recap under there of comments from the previous time we had professional development open. So overall, the biggest thing we heard is to simplify. You guys have heard that people are concerned about the training requirements and being able to retain staff. There's also a reoccurring concern about removing nurse consultants. So that's the high-level overview of the summary. You have the details. Lori sent those out. Okay, so how are we doing on time? Let's see. So this weekend, we're starting in full large group consensus. We'll do 2 together, get the ball rolling as usual. And those are both professional development. Those are ones that have gone through small group and you guys feel like are ready for full consensus. At that point, we'll then break out into a TA resolution group for sections 0-100. So as you probably know, 0-100 is the foundation of professional development. It outlines all of the positions and the different qualifications. And so we anticipate that's going to take the whole rest of the day. And our goal is that that small group finishes 0-100 today. So I'll say that again. Our goal is for the small group to finish 0-100 today. All right, the rest of the weekend, no pressure, but pressure hinges on that. So because it is foundational, if you guys can get through 0-100, we'll come back tomorrow morning, give you guys a chance to debrief with your team, sleep on it, come back in the morning, have some time to come together again as a team, and then measure full consensus. So once we have 0-100 done, we'll be able to move into the other professional development sections that rely on 0-100. So at that point, we plan to split into 3 small groups. And so I'm, at this point, going to point you to one of the handouts on your table. It's called Consensus Queue for January. So on the first page, that's landscape, you'll see what we're doing today. On the left-hand side, in large group, we're doing 2 professional development together. On the right-hand side, small groups going out for 0-100. And then the large group, you'll see what the large group's going to continue to do. If you skip to the next page, again, ideally, small group finishes 0-100. Tomorrow morning, we measure full consensus. We reach full consensus on 0-100. Then we split out into 3 small groups. And you'll see how the small groups are split out, their assignments, so you can go ahead and think about what group you want to be in. 2 groups are going to do professional development, and 1 group is going to continue on with program admin. If any group finishes early, we'll look at definitions. So our goal across the board is to really focus on the content of and the intent of the language as opposed to wordsmithing the actual way that it's written. So as facilitators, we know that. We'll make sure that we capture your intent bubbles instead of spending too much time on the actual minute grammar details. So we'll help you with that, but we also hope that you will help hold each other accountable as we negotiate. Okay, so again, this is here for you to follow along if you need to. We'll let you know if there are any changes. Any questions about what we're doing this weekend for Friday and Saturday? Okay, I'm sure you'll ask me as we go along if you have any questions. So then we get to Sunday. So Sunday, we're going to start off finishing measuring consensus, because again, our goal is to finish all of professional development this weekend. And then we're going to take a break, and then we're going to have a working lunch where we have a presentation from Sonia and Tyler about the focus monitoring checklist. So we know this is something that you guys have asked a lot of questions about. It's been in development from Dell, and so they have some great updates about the new process, the new checklist, and want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. So we'll start there. And then that's actually a 2-hour time block, so we'll also take the second half of that time to answer any general questions and prepare for what you're looking for February. So we all made a decision that we picked a date that Dr. Feeney cannot join, so we want to make sure we get any questions that you want him to answer ahead of time, so we have that for February. So it's really partially time for you to learn about the focus monitoring checklist and partially time for all of us to prepare for February. So that's Sunday. And then February, we'll finish up whatever we haven't done in terms of measuring consensus and any tabled sections for TA resolution. And then we're going to move into full review, the weight review, and definition review. All right. Before we jump in here, any questions about moving forward, Sunday or into February? Not yet. I did hear a question, are we going to have a prep team between now and February? That really depends on the progress we make this weekend and what you guys decide on Sunday in terms of how we're going to structure February. So probably, but we'll hear from you once we get there. We can make that decision together. Judy, you look like you want to say something.
I did, but I think I'll wait till the end of the weekend, then I'll have my question.
Okay. Thanks, Judy. I do want to just quickly recognize, could you raise your hand if you're on either of the prep team calls in December? Awesome. Thank you all for your effort. Let's give them a round of applause for taking extra time out. I know December was a hard time, so we really appreciate all your in-between work. It's really helped for this weekend. Okay, so we are reviewing our principles and core values. I remind you back in November, all of you took a chance to really remember why you're here. So I want to bring you back to what you decided that day, why you were here from the beginning since May. And please keep that in your mind as we go through this weekend as well, and remind each other of what that is when you're giving your opinions and negotiating. Try to think about using that perspective and sharing that perspective in your comments. And really, that brings us to the orange. We have our code of conduct. That brings us to our code of conduct. And then the orange. We skip through these slides, but I do want to say that, again, professional development, we all know, is going to be the hardest section of our negotiating rulemaking process. And so I can stand up here and tell you all about our protocol and all about our orange and our lovely code of conduct, but really I ask you all to hold each other accountable. And if you feel like people aren't, use your call to actions use us as facilitators during breaks to make sure that your voice is being heard and that people are following the protocol as written. One thing that we heard a lot is that, we have this big room where we're all together and we follow the protocol there, but sometimes when we're walking around getting snacks or going to the restroom, sometimes we forget about that protocol and we let down our guard. And I think I want to remind everyone to be conscious that these are very sensitive subjects. We really want to respect each other. So to really hold that protocol throughout this entire weekend. I know it's hard, but really appreciate if you take some time to really reflect on that and make sure that you're holding each other accountable as well. Okay, so logistics, call to actions. Don't forget that we can always send to TA resolution. Any point, you can call for a consensus vote. You can table. As I mentioned, we had 3 full sections that were tabled. So keep that in mind as you're making that decision. One of our rules, that if you can remember, is that if we feel like there's just no way you're going to budge, your team is going to budge on an issue, this is really a place where you send it to a table, and we'll come back to it. All right, this worked out really well, our new sidebar. Don't forget, you can always call for a sidebar. You should state who you're sidebarring with and how much time you're looking for. At the point of sidebar, if you want to add a third sidebar in, just state that. We'll put more time on the clock and state it for the whole team. And then after that, at any point, you can also call for a team caucus. So as you recall, it worked out really well when we did a sidebar, maybe with 2 teams for 2 or 3 minutes, and then move straight into a 2 or 3 minute team caucus to kind of debrief on how that sidebar went. So I hope we can continue with that. I thought it was not only fun, but very productive. So hopefully it can be this weekend as well. Okay, that moves us into review of documents. And I apologize, I'm going fast, just because we started a little late. So in front of you, you have an agenda. Should look familiar. We use the same general format. You will see that we squeezed in some extra time in order to account for Sunday. So it looks slightly different from usual, but you have all the times in front of you. We'll stick to that. We have our timer. You also have the consensus queue that's printed in front of you. So you can always know what's coming up next. Email to you is the master negotiated rulemaking document. We'll obviously have that up on the screen. And then there's a lot of resources in front of you and that were in your email. So we'll start with Q&A. So there are 2 documents on your table. Because you guys are in front of me, I'll show you. There's one that has the table up front, and there's also a Q&A. So these 2 actually came from, I believe, June, when we first started talking about professional development. So these should look familiar. That's in front of you. Angela's going to talk a little bit more about them. Then you also have a big landscape legal document on your table. That is a professional development crosswalk. That's new. And then these other items, I won't read them to you, but these are things that we'll have ready for you throughout the weekend or you've already received by email. So I know it's a little bit of information overload this weekend, but we'll help you through it. All of your TA resolution folks from Dell who will be with you in the small groups know these materials very well, so we'll help you with that. If at any point you feel like you're lost on which document we're looking at, just let us know, and we'll point you to the right one. Okay, so that was a lot. That was really fast. Any questions? Okay, no questions for now then. We'll move into a 15-minute overview-ish of professional development before we jump in. So Angela will do that.
Good morning, everybody. So I've been, it's funny. Probably this week, I've heard from maybe 5 people who have said, you talk really fast. And I know I do. So Lori was one. But seriously, like every day this last week. So please tell me if you need me to slow down, and I'd be glad to do so. So yes. Okay, great. So for those of you who may not remember me or who I haven't met, my name is Angela Abrams, and I'm with the Department of Early Learning, and I'm the Professional Development Administrator for the department. And my little bit of time here this morning, I really just kind of wanted to set the stage with any new information or resources that we have for you Hopefully this is something that can help prepare us as we go through our day today. Again, remembering that this is just all a part of the recommendations conversation that we've been talking about, and really pulling together some tools that are improvements from what we have shared in the past, or at least I think they're improvements. But then also looking at the feedback and the questions that we've received along the way, starting to think about how else can we condense and consolidate some of this professional development information and the qualifications information into a way that may work for you if you think in Excel like I do. Sometimes seeing a chart is a little easier than reading through the text. So what we're seeing in chart form is the same as you would read in text form. And so some may prefer reading the narrative part that's in the actual draft WAC. Some may prefer this. Just want to give you some options. Any questions before I get started?
So you do talk really fast.
Slow down. Okay, 6 times this week. At your table, you have a few documents. I might see if I can borrow one right here to just kind of show you. Do you have? Yeah, I was just going to do you mind if I share it with them? Okay. So the one that I'm going to go over first is focused on this colorful document that you see behind me here. So a few things that we added from last time, and just kind of talking about the structure, not the content yet, is identifying which WAC are we talking about when we're looking at this chart. So if you were to look back at the narrative piece, the actual WAC, you'd be able to see that 0-100, which we're going to spend most of the time on today, is this chart's going to be most helpful for you. We've added in the age, experience, and then one other thing that is different than the last chart that you saw is we added a, I don't know, calling it like a baseline or a threshold line, which is minimum hiring requirement, and then the proposed WAC, which is the topic that we're spending most conversation about today. I'd say both of those, like all of these we're spending conversation on today, but one of the columns is newer to you than the other. And that's really the light gray area. That's more of what you've seen in the draft so far. One thing that we've heard along the way is that people were really wondering, well, does this mean that we're proposing a timeline now, or in the future, or in 5 years, or in 2 years, or whatever that might be? And we're going to go into detail on all of these topics, but that's what the dark blue area is. So as we're going through our work today, you'll be able to see that's the timeline that we're proposing as we look at this area. Then there's a couple of definitions to kind of help on that right-hand side. So again, I want to remind everyone that this is really the bulk of our day, so we're not going to go into details, but just want to make sure that this is a useful tool for you. On the next slide, any questions first before I move on? Sorry, yeah.
So this might not be the time, but I'm curious if there's going to be any conversation about the increased availability of education options, because that seems to be the primary challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you asked that question. I think we've seen that consistently come up, and the dialogue between how do we have this conversation, which the bulk of our day and the breaking out in the small group will be around topics similar. How do we hold on to the implementation plan alongside with the rules so that we can make sure that we're moving forward in a way that they complement each other? But yes, I would say that's a big bulk of the conversation. So going on to the next slide is a document that is talking about roles and pre-service. And through this work, we broke this into 2 different charts. The first one is what you've been looking at most recently, which shows a breakout between family homes and centers, family homes on top, centers on the bottom, and going across is looking at the, it looks like we might have one little column missing at the top for some reason. Going across is looking at the, it's okay, is looking at the topics. Yeah, there we go. So looking at DEL orientation is newly added because that's something that wasn't on there before. Yeah, for some reason on the printed version, on the different one, it's not listed, but if you look at your next page that's on landscape, you will see them there. And so you might end up choosing to just look at that table if that's easier for you, or you can fill them in as Marie was talking about up front. So DEL orientation, program staff orientation are 2 new columns that we added. And that's really talking about, do you need to attend the DEL orientation? We've had new conversation about that. Do you need to attend your own program staff orientation? And then we have some of the medical pieces, the TB test, we have portable background check listed. And that's kind of like the end of things outside of training, true training topics. Then we go into childcare basic, and everything else to the right is some sort of training topic that we have been talking about along the way. The green area is content that as we continue to move forward will be moving into and updated in Childcare Basics. A reminder that Childcare Basics is the place that we want to continue to hold all of our required trainings, whether it's state or federal. And we will not need to necessarily be taking all of those trainings as individual topics, but we wanted to be able to show you what all of the training topics were. Any questions on pre-service chart? So the next one is a combined, oh, sorry. That is a very key conversation for our time today. I'm glad you observed that and asked, and you are absolutely correct. We will bring that up into more in our dialogue today, and it was an intentional piece. Is that enough to hold us by? Do you need me to go deeper right now? Okay. So the next one is really a combined chart for people who are wanting to see this together. It doesn't break out family home assistant and center assistant, for example. It just shows the way you would read the WAC, assistant, lead, so on. Really, the rest of it's the same. So roles and in-service, what kind of training do you need when you're out and about and doing your thing, moving on? So this has the roles, and then it has the in-service training. On the right-hand side, there's a little tiny summary of the big chart. So if you had to have a more simplistic table, that was just kind of like my notes of what would that person need to take. The last chart that we have here is something that is new. And throughout my observation of the conversations that we've been having, one of the key questions has always been kind of coming up, but do they count in ratio? But can they be left alone? And those are key questions to a program. So instead of feeling like we can't find that information really quickly, we decided to throw it up here on a chart so that as we're talking about things, you can say, okay, if we're talking about a lead or an assistant or an aide, what does that mean? As we continue to work through volunteer, which is a key conversation piece, what does that mean? If you need to take notes on this for you, you can kind of pencil in any ideas that you might have on what that means for you to continue to support our conversation to move forward. So again, new chart, but the information is really focused on, I called it program impact, but yeah, that's that. And this is also a new one. Let's see, you also have this printed. It may take a little bit to digest this, but at a quick glance, what we're showing is at the moment a provider starts their educational journey, assuming that they're starting from brand new or they haven't completed any credits or anything, which isn't necessarily true for everyone. So this is kind of looking at that stance. How long might it take someone to go through the proposed recommendation? So if they are in a particular role with a certain qualification required, what would it look like if they attended full-time? What would it look like if they attended part-time or half-time? What would it look like if they only wanted to do one class at a time? And so depending on an individual, this can always change. Depending on college nuances, this could change. Depending on if they want to do summer quarter, this could change. But we wanted to give you something to be able to show what is the timeline and what does that look like at a quick, simplistic snapshot. We also put 2 lines in there to roughly define when the implementation for new WAC, but knowing that there's still a grace period or a time frame beyond that, and what might it look like as we continue to move forward. So no matter where we land at the end of today, I think a chart like this could be helpful so that we can continue to show people what's the time frame from which we start to what's the time frame as we evolve as a planning tool. So I think keep this in mind for the conversation, but then also how can something like this be a resource as we continue to move forward. So that's those are just really a summary of the materials. I wanted to give you a chance to walk through those. Again, all of this is part of the conversation that we'll be having today. One thing that I wanted to call attention to that we noticed, I noticed particularly in the feedback that we were receiving along the way as we were continuing to work on the version that we'll go over today, is a lot of interest in having timelines that may not have aligned with our federal requirements. So I just wanted to remind us that there are some areas that are a little bit less flexible than others, and we try to continue to keep that at the top of the training charts with CCDF requirement. Many of you know that the next plan, the next preprint is already out for review, and so we're always kind of continually to reflect and thinking on what are our federal requirements and how does that impact the training piece. Again, there's always some flexibility in some parts of CCDF implementation, but pre-service and in-service training are areas that are a little bit less flexible when you read the language of the federal law. any grounding questions before we kind of kick into the day in regards to materials? Maybe not content necessarily, but materials.
We have time for a team caucus before we go to small group.
That is very possible, but I will pass it to the experts. So we're going to do 2 professional development together, get the ball rolling, have a team caucus so you can take a chance to look at all the materials before your team members go out.
So you know that I'll be here with you throughout the weekend and looking forward to our conversations. And I don't know if we all did introductions, but I want to remind you that Michelle Roberts is over there, who's also with the professional development team and has been deeply embedded in a lot of the creation of materials and conversation and supports. So just know whether you're in a group, in anything that you're doing, that you can come and ask us questions as needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. And you actually had 2 minutes to spare, so
Oh,
even
that's
though you
good.
slowed down, nice job. Yeah, you can just leave it. All right, thanks again, Angela, and her and Michelle will be in the small group for the 0100 after we get started. Okay, so again, if you follow along with the consensus cue, you'll see that in large group, we'll go ahead and start with 0108, program-based new staff orientation. Yes, Karen. Yes. Sure. We're going to do 2 professional development together in full group, get the ball rolling. That usually works for us. And then you'll take a team caucus, and then we'll go to 0100. That'll go out.
I know that it kept me repeated to me several times.
No, I understand it's early in the morning. Anyone else have questions about what we're doing? Okay then, we will wait for Lori to get our screen upright, but again, it's 0108, program-based new staff orientation. I'll go ahead and let you know that 0108 was subgroup negotiated and in queue for consensus because this whole section, okay, you were negotiated in September. It was reviewed by a December prep team, and the Deltec writers proposed new language. So that's where we are right now. Okay.
Before we get started, Rachel asked me to let everybody know that although the sign outside with the parking says $19, whatever, $20, it is $10. So, yeah.
Yep. 0108. Okay. Great, we're adding new members as we go, so that's perfect timing. All right, 0108. So I'm going to point out here that for all of professional development, to help you guys along with what's happened with each of the subsections, what we've done is added, you'll see at top the little asterisk that tells you what it's been through. Right, so subsection 1 was in a small group in September, reviewed by prep team, and then revised language from Deltec. So through all of professional development, you'll see these prompts throughout the way, so you can know how many times you've touched this. All right, I'll go ahead and jump in, and again, this is usually helpful for us to get our wheels turning and our balls rolling. So 0108 is called Program-Based New Staff Orientation. So I'm going to read what's in the box, which was the Deltec writer most recent suggestion. 1, an early learning provider must develop, deliver, and document the delivery of an early learning staff orientation specific to the early learning program and premises. Orientation topics must include those listed in subsection 2 of this section. Providers must be oriented prior to working with children and as state or federal regulations change, a weight of 5. Okay, so I'll move to number 2. Number 2, orientation topics must include but are not limited to A, staff policies listed in WAC 0110 and Chapter 43, 215, RCW, and these other chapters, weight of NA. So that is it for 0108. So I'm going to measure consensus on subsection 1. Let's try to measure consensus first. Do you guys need a team caucus? All right, we'll do a 3-minute team caucus. We're going to add 2 more minutes to the clock. All right. So multiple teams have come up to me because they're slightly confused. I understand why now. Apologies. So before this weekend, Lori sent out the master track change document and then also separately these series of Dell tech writer changes, right? So we got them this week. So we went ahead and sent that to you so you had something. And then yesterday, we included everything into the master document. So that's what's on the screen right now. What's on the screen right now, I've just emailed to all the team leads. So that's the confusion there. We needed some time to add them in. The exception is 0100 is separate altogether, and you'll deal with that in a small group. Okay?
Relates back, oops, sorry,
to what we're talking about here too, just so that we have the context for this. The CCDF document that's listed as an improved plan on the Dell website is the CCDF document we are discussing. Is that correct? It says approved CCDF plan. So it's a state plan, correct? Yes, it's listed as, yes, for Washington. Correct. Okay, and that's the document that is the basis of these rules that we're talking about. Correct. Thank you.
Have the team leads received my email? Okay. So I'm going to maybe put 3 more minutes on the clock, give you a chance to circulate that and pull up the correct documents so we're all on the same page. All right, so 4 more minutes on the clock for Team Caucus.
So, Debbie, just to make sure I know what you're looking at, that is the master draft of 21, including our recommendations. Debbie,
And that's what we wanted to see, yes. Because we weren't getting your the box. That's what now we have to
so the boxes do. I think they just got what we're looking at there is basically the master draft with our that's what I was talking about. Yep. 1, subsection 1 and 2 are Go get him, Debbie.
You're fine.
Hey, Debbie, if I give you the background check authorization thing, is that okay? I don't have any send it. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I sent it to
All right, is everyone on the same page now? Okay, thank you for working with us on the technical and timing difficulty. So I'll come back here to 0108 subsection 1 and try to measure consensus. So I'm measuring consensus on subsection 1. I'm confused on the confusion. What's in the box? Yes. At a weight of 5. Okay. All right. Yes. So family home has the proposed small change.
So we find that Dell rules change quite often, and the only way that you're notified for it is if you're on the listserv. Like there's no mailer, and so providing documentation of orientation for all of the changes that come around sporadically, not just when WAC changes, would be a challenge, and many people would get written up for a weight of 5. So we propose that the documentation be moved down to number 2, that is not weighted, but that the delivery is still there. So it would be documentation, just the documentation get moved to number 2. So number 1 would read, an early learning provider must develop and deliver an early learning staff orientation specific to the early learning program and premises. Orientation topics must include those listed in subsection 2 of this section. Providers must be oriented prior to working with children as the state or federal regulations change. So we're okay. We would really prefer it be a level 4 or a weight of 4, but the documentation is really our concern, is having that piece of paper when a rule may have changed that you're not aware of.
Okay, so we'll let Lori catch up real quick. And Lori, if we go back up to that sentence, an early learning provider must develop and deliver. Oh, thank you. I'll wait for you. Deliver in early learning. So the delivery of, we can remove. The delivery of after deliver. Just a. Okay, so I think that's it. All right, Judy.
Okay, so the Dell team is going to propose that this go to a TA resolution, probably with the next one. And my comment, the one comment I would make is that the documentation is the ability for us to regulate this rule. And without documentation, we would have no way of knowing whether it had or hadn't happened. But at this point, I think there's enough question that let's move forward and throw it in with 0110 tomorrow or whenever.
So we did point out earlier, I did during the team caucus talk to licensing. They pointed out that 2A refers to 0110, which is the staff policies, which is on our queue tomorrow for a subcommittee. So I think that subgroup can work on these two together. All right, so we'll measure consensus on the moving this to tomorrow. All right, so family home, all 5s, licensing 5s, parents. Parents are good? Okay. Head Start ECAP, good. I think all centers said yes too, right? Okay. All right, so we'll move 0108 to the so it'll be subgroup 2 tomorrow. Group 2. Yep. Okay, let's try 0115. 0115 is staff records. Okay, 0115, subsection 1, was negotiated by a small group in September, reviewed in December by the prep team, and that prep team decided that it was ready for consensus. So that's where we are with subsection 1. Okay, number 1, an early learning provider must establish a record system for themselves, household members, staff, and volunteers that meet the business needs of the early learning program. Early learning program records must be A, verified by the licensee, center director, assistant director, or program supervisor. B, input and maintain the electronic workforce registry, and C, easily accessible on-site or kept in the program's administrative office for department review for verification during department inspections or early learning program visits, either in the electronic workforce registry or in paper format. Paper records are not required to be kept once entered into and confirmed within the electronic workforce registry. It's a weight of 1. Okay, so number 2, hit the December prep team. They had some proposed edits. Dell Tech took a look at those, cleaned them up for clarity. And so that's what's in the box. Number 2, early learning program records must include the following for each early learning provider working the early learning program. A, first and last name of the provider and program staff. B, date of birth. C, job title. D, education and qualifications pursuant to WAC 0100. E, first and last day of employment. F, professional development support plan. G, proof of professional credentials, requirements, and training for each early learning staff member pursuant to 0105 through 0110. And H, documentation of all staff trainings. Staff files must be kept current in the electronic workforce registry. Staff names must be deleted from the electronic workforce registry when no longer employed at the early learning program at a weight of 4. So you'll see these are the old versions. Okay, number 3 had the same thing, went through December prep. After September negotiation, the prep had some feedback, and so Dell Tech cleaned it up. So number 3, a licensee, center director, assistant director, or program supervisor must maintain the following records for each early learning provider and staff in a confidential manner. These records must be reviewable by the department and must include, at a minimum, A, copy of current government-issued photo identification, B, emergency contact information, C, completed employment application, D, observation, evaluation, and feedback information, and E, the licensee social security number, federal EIN, or a written document stating the licensee does not process either, in a weight of 4. And number 4 was actually removed completely. This was removed, I believe, during December prep team. Dell Tech writers took another look and agreed that that it was okay to strike. Okay, so let's move back up to the top. Oh, did you want to state why? So, okay, the reasons are all stated in your comment boxes if you need that. All right, so I'm going to measure consensus on subsection 1 at a weight of 1. Section 1 at a weight of 1. Okay, licensing. All 5s. Parents. All 5s. Head Start ECAP, all 5s. Center, all 5s. Family home, 5s. Great. Okay, I'm going to measure consensus on subsection 2, weight of 4. Yep, 1 minute team caucus on the clock. Centers, do you need more time? Okay, 1 more minute on the clock for centers.
Nine. What's your name? Usually, Cliff, nice to meet you.
Centers, are you good? Okay. Yes, family home providers. Licensing. Okay, licensing, are you good with that? All right, family home and licensing, you're gonna do a 1 minute sidebar.
Oh, they're right here. They're right next to me. I'm a little disoriented this morning. I went to Red Lion.
Wait a minute, she's grabbing. I got you.
So I remember in a creature of habit, that's the Red Lion thing.
Yeah.
They're all going to be at Red Lion. Okay, CTAC it is. Last day of employment necessary. If we retain staff like this is the retired, but she is my villain person. So I don't have a termination. I don't have a last day or Right, okay, okay, so if I mark her as done,
Looks like they're still sidebarring, so I'll add just another minute.
volunteer, she'd be like a new person, right? Okay. That'll change her, start her characters, right? That's how that would be. And the other thing is proof of professional requirements. So do I need to keep a transcript? What does that mean? Or is that merit record? Submit their documentation, verify their merits. I received that. Okay. We're all going to go to the same place.
Yes.
All right, so we're gonna come back together. I'm gonna measure consensus on subsection 2. So measuring consensus on subsection 2, licensing are all 5s. Head Start ECAP, all 5s. Parents are all 3s. Yep, family home. We have 3 3s. 5 3s, thank you. Okay, all 3s from family home as well. Center is blocking. All right, we'll start with centers.
We have a problem with 2F, the professional development support plan, and being weighted a 4. It's just, we don't want to, it's another piece of paperwork in a file that, it's just hard for us to keep doing all these different plans that we're going to have to do throughout the WAC. So we would like to have the professional development support plan removed.
So you would strike professional development support
Yes.
plan and you would change the weight to?
Well, we would be okay with a 4 if we, I mean, having that plan and it being a weighted 4 is the hard part.
Okay. We'll go back and hear from parents. So you had 3s. If you would like to state your concern.
Our concern was that in this section, it referenced 170, 300, 100, plus 105 through 110. Without us doing those is without approving this, without doing those. But we could do it tentatively approving the other section.
Thank you. Family home.
3 because our concern is really around it being a weight of 4 with a documentation paperwork request. So we support centers' ideas. As staff development plans change often, that is a lot of extra documentation that would be required.
Okay, so the proposal on the table is to strike F and keeping it a weight of 4. Do you need a team caucus? Okay, I'll measure consensus on striking F and keeping a weight of 4. Centers are all 5s. Head Start ECAP, all 5s. Licensing, all 5s. Family home providers, all 3s. We'll have a 1-minute caucus. Okay, we'll hear from parents.
Can we have a sidebar with Dale?
All right, 2-minute sidebar with Dell between parents and Dell licensing team. All right, so we're all set on the sidebar. We'll hear from parents. Did you guys want to provide some feedback? Okay, so we're going to measure consensus again. On number 2, striking F at a weight of 4. We'll measure consensus again on number 2, striking F at a weight of 4. Licensing all 5s, family homes all 3s. Head Start ECAP, we're all 5s, centers all 5s. And parents, 5s and 2 4s. Family home, did you want to state your concern?
I mean, we can live with it, but we would like the weight to be lower because it is, again, a paperwork issue, a documentation that seems to be challenging sometimes, especially as we're moving into an electronic registry and we have a very challenged technology access.
Okay, thank you. We'll note that concern. And of course, the workforce registry technology challenges have been reoccurring and on the parking lot and implementation list. All right. Number 3 was we striked that. Stricken. No. There was a 3. It was 4. Okay, sorry. Number 3. Measure consensus on number 3 with a weight of 4. Going to measure consensus on number 3 at a weight of 4. Licensing. All 5s. Parents. All 5s. Head Start ECAP. We have a block from centers. Go ahead and hear from centers.
We were looking at it and thinking and hoping to add, if applicable, to the observation, evaluation, and feedback information. Because some of our best observations are informal, and it would be then added work to go back and have to write it down to put it in a file all the time. And again, to be at a level or a weight of 4 if you didn't go back and document that observation, evaluation, and feedback information. So if applicable, would give us room to have our more formal evaluations and observations in the file, but not necessary for every observation, evaluation, and feedback process to be documented.
All right, with that proposed change, licensing you already have, okay.
We are not reading this as meaning every time you give any feedback, it has to be documented. We are reading this more as if there is something that really needed to be documented, either that they're doing very, very well, or they're not doing poorly, or you did a specific observation in this classroom, that's when we would want the note of what that looked like. We're not thinking that every time you give somebody feedback, you have to document it. It's that deliberate evaluating how they're doing. Based on the facility's criteria for what that looks like.
Centers.
So we feel like even with that explanation, that if applicable would still honor that. Because I guess the concern for us is, say I've had an employee that worked for me for 11 months and the only time I do a formal written documentation around this is annually. And if it is read that in my teacher files, I have to have this kind of information, for us, it just adds a lot of clarity around exactly what you just said, Judy, to have if applicable in there, because we agree completely.
And I guess maybe we need to let the writers maybe tweak a little bit, but if applicable, from our perspective, would imply that this is 100% optional. And we don't want that either. We do need something to follow through, but it sounds like we're on the same page with the idea that a deliberate observation, whether it's annual or whatever, would be done, but maybe this just isn't well enough wordsmithed.
So we're going to hear from Family Homes.
Requiring observation and evaluation of your staff, and so it seems like it should follow what that is. And I believe that it reads that it can be formal or informal. And so we would agree that the if, or changing the if to when applicable, and then having some determination on when it's required to have a documentation like Judy's suggesting, if there is an issue or there's a WAC violation or
Okay.
those types of things.
Before we wordsmith some more, I wonder if this is something that if Lori could write a comment bubble of intent. Okay, centers are saying no. All right, Judy.
We're wondering if it would work to say at least annually, so that it's putting a criteria in there that implies it has to be done, but it doesn't have to be done constantly. So at a minimum annually, or at a minimum once per year, or something that.
All right, 1 minute, Team Caucus. All right, centers, you need more time? All right, so we'll come back together. Let's try to measure consensus on this language for at least annually, and the Del Tech writers will wordsmith it so it grammatically works. So I'll measure consensus on 3, weighted 4 for at least annually on D around observations and evaluations.
Are you including if applicable as well? No, taking that out.
Okay, licensing, all 5s, parents, all 5s, Head Start ECAP, all 5s, centers, all 5s, family home. All 3 3s and 1 4. So we'll hear from family home about your concern.
Our concern is that the weight is high. We would prefer a weight of 3.
Okay, so we'll note that. Okay, with that, we have our first consensus of the day. Nice job. Okay, so now we're going to move in. Yes, question, concern?
Sorry, just an observation under 3C where it says completed employment application. Oftentimes we'll get a resume in lieu of that application. Is that acceptable, and does it need to be spelled out here, or do they have to write on the application as well as the resume? It seems like duplicative information.
If that is your application process, then that would be acceptable. If you have an application form you want people to fill out, that's what we would be looking for But if you don't, if what you ask for is people to send resumes, a resume would be fine.
All right, great. So now we have, we'll move into Team Caucus because we're going to move to the 0-100 subgroup. So I'll put 10 minutes on the clock. That's enough for your Team Caucus. You can choose who's going to send out and make sure that your team is on the same page on the goals that you have for those people that are going out. So 10 minutes on the clock for Team Caucus for 0-100 preparation.
Thanks so much. I know, they're pretty scared. Yeah? I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
Go purple.
Purple, purple. They all like purple, but I like pink.
Sally got me blue.
Well, blowing, like taking a deep breath helps you to relax. So when
I know, it's so good for you to breathe. That stops and breathe. Some people get they just stop. Slow breath. And like,
well, you're an artist, a creative type, because you're in the art field, and I think that because I'm an artist as well. And so we need to spread art, good artness. You know, like things like the character, like, oh, I just breathed. So it's important that we're in this world.
you gotta appreciate every day that you have.
That's the thing. It doesn't always happen. It's first. You're obviously great.
I like
Thanks for hooking us up with our marriage.
Except you work around,
I bring pups too, but that's later. Bring pups.
Right. 151. Sorry. Yeah, it functionally doesn't change. Well, 108 was 115. Not everybody. Not everybody. But yeah, one seat is which literally means kind of giving yeah, they're doing one meter. Hello. Oh, you got all your stuff. Oh, we got like 17 for 100. There you go.
Going to, if you're going to 0100, you're going to Orca A. It's out to the right, Orca A.
Really been using that, and as long as the facilitator says parents 5, last time, I think we weren't always doing that, so then I had
Those 32 early adopters, we want to create.
sorry, that's why I should be
I'm waiting for them to leave. I may make one. We'll just combine them later. All right, centers, did you send somebody? 3 people, all right. Head Start ECAP, did you send your people or person? Awesome. Parents, good. Licensing, did you send? All right, and family home. So you're good? Okay. All right, so in the room, we're going to pick back up where we left off on program admin. So we're going to start with 0455. 0455, attendance records.
All right, let's get started back with the next section. We're looking at section 0455. All right, I'll begin by just reading through and then we'll come back to subsection 1. This is in relation to attendance records. An early learning provider may keep a child in care up to a maximum of 10 hours each day.
If needed, the maximum time may be extended based upon the parent or guardian's typical work, an agreed-upon alternate schedule, or travel to and from the early learning program. That has a weight of 1. Subsection 2, an early learning provider must keep daily attendance records either in paper or electronic format for each child, including the children of staff in the program. These records must be available for department review at all times and must clearly document A, the name of the child, B, the date of care, C, child arrival and departure times from the early learning program, D, signature of parent or other authorized person at time of arrival and departure, and E, a staff signature and time when the child leaves the early learning program to attend school or participate in off-site activities authorized by the parent or other authorized person. That has a weight of 4. Okay, subsection 3 of that same rule on attendance, an early learning provider must keep daily staff classroom and or family home attendance records on paper or in an electronic format. This attendance record must list the specific staff assigned to care for children with special needs or circumstances, one-on-one, and volunteers who count in staff-to-child ratio. The attendance record must clearly document A, the name of staff, one-on-one care staff or volunteer, B, the number of children in classrooms and staff-to-child ratio if applicable, and C, the date, and D, start and end times of assigned staff. That has a weight of 1. Subsection 4, if the attendance records are kept electronically, the electronic system must A, record either an electronic signature, swipe card, personal identification number, PIN, biometric reader, or similar action by the parent or authorized person when signing the child in or out of care, or staff notation of who picked up, dropped off along with time in, out, if authorized person does not have electronic signature, swipe card, PIN, biometric reader, or similar action. B, ensure the authenticity, confidentiality, integrity, security, accessibility, and protection against disproof of the electronic records. C, be able to produce an authentic, verifiable, and uniquely identified written record for each transaction. D, be able to authenticate, prove the identity of the sender of the record, and ensure that the electronic record has not been altered. E, be able to capture an electronic record for each transaction conducted. F, be able to retain the electronic record in an accessible form for their legal minimum retention period. G, be able to search and retrieve electronic records in the normal course of business. And H, be able to perform in an accurate, reliable, and consistent manner in the normal course of business. That has a weight of 1. In that same attendance section, subsection 5, electronic attendance records must contain information necessary to reproduce the entire electronic record and associated signatures in a form that permits a person viewing or printing the entire electronic record to verify A, the contents of the electronic record, B, the method used to sign the electronic record, C, the person signing the electronic record, and D, the date signatures were executed, with a weight of 1. Subsection 6, an early learning provider must be in compliance with attendance record requirements for Working Connections, seasonal child care subsidy, or other subsidy programs of WAC 170-290. And that has a weight of NA. All right, so for this rule on attendance records, let's begin with consensus taking for subsection 1 with a weight of 1. Yes?
We would like a 2-minute caucus, please.
Okay. Okay? All right, so for subsection 1, let's take consensus. All right, family home, all 5s. Licensing, all 5s. Parents, 5s. Head Start ECAP, 5s, and center-based 5s. All right? Yay! Consensus reached on subsection 1. Take consensus on subsection 2. Yes, a comment from center-based. Is this a comment on subsection 2? Okay.
For D, under this, can it say signature or electronic capture of parent? Because we have an electronic system, we're never going to have a signature, and I realize that's covered under 4 of the ways it can be captured electronically, but I just want that reflected here so that it's not. But they don't, my parents don't actually sign, it's a biometric scanner. They don't physically sign in. I understand, but it's not a signature. Like when I see signature, I think actually signing a name, not a biometric scan in and out.
So you're requesting that the language is repeated in letter D that's reflected up above. Is that what the request is?
I just want it to be clear that if we're using an electronic system, there doesn't have to actually be a physical signature somewhere.
So I actually had the same concern, and we actually do have a definition of electronic signature in the definition. So no, I actually think that it should say signature, including electronic signature, because we actually have a specific definition of electronic signature and includes a symbol or whatever. It includes all those different things. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay? Yes. Are you voting? Okay. So with the addition of that language to subsection 2, item D, let's take consensus. Licensing's ready with 5s. Family home 5s. Parents 5s. Head Start ECAP 5s and a 4. And center-based 5s. Good. All right, thank you. Subsection 3. Give you a moment to refresh on it. Yes. 1 minute on the clock for caucus. All right, are we ready? 2 more minutes? Okay.
Could centers please sidebar with Dell?
Okay, so coming back to subsection 3. Center base, do you need another minute? All set? Okay. Are other groups ready to take consensus on subsection 3? Okay. Start with licensing. 5s. Thank you. Family home 5s. Parents 5s. All right. Head Start ECAP 5s and center based. I see 3s, 4s. All 3s? Okay. That was a shy 4 then, or a. All right. Did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, we just want to make a comment about the staff. I mean, in talking to Judy, the intent is to know where staff are, you know, if there's a claim of abuse or ratio or those kinds of things. Just, you know, this is something that would kind of be left up to staff. And then if, as far as documentation on how we do it, and this may be a new practice and a lot of paperwork, if you're signing in and out every time you let someone go potty, or every time, you know, you're in and out of a classroom, it's going to be a lot of paperwork, a lot of documentation that we didn't necessarily have before.
Comment, making note. All right, so taking a look then at subsection 4. And the supporting points underneath. We ready to take consensus? See heads nodding. Okay, we'll start with licensing, 5s. Family home 5s. Parents, 5s. Head Start ECAP 5s and center based all 5s. Very good. All right, reached consensus on 4. Let's go to item number 5. electronic attendance records and the supporting details underneath. You ready to take consensus on sub point 5? Licensing, see 5s, okay. Family home, 5s. Parents, 5s. Head Start ECAP, okay. 1 minute, 1 minute on the clock.
So centers just have a quick question for Dale. So on B, it says the method used to sign the electronic record. And we're wondering, like in ProCare, it doesn't tell us if it's a biometric scanner, if we have a PIN code, or, I mean, it doesn't, it authenticates who it was, but not necessarily the method that was used. So we're wondering if that could, there could be something else, or say if applicable, I don't, you know, something else there.
Basically, if they're signing it with a code, we'd want to be able to verify that that's what happened. Or if they're, I mean, whatever the method is listed in 4A, we would want to be able to, under 5, show that that actually matches up. Does that make sense?
Sorry. So yes, we understand that, but our system right now, ProCare, that's used by a lot of childcare centers, it doesn't show whether or not the parent used their fingerprint that day or their PIN number that day, but it shows that parent is the one who signed in or out, but it doesn't tell us did they use their PIN or did they use their fingerprint that day. So that's what we're wondering with 5B. We don't know whether or not they used their fingerprint or their PIN number that day, but it tells us this parent signed out at this time, but it doesn't say they used their PIN or they used their fingerprint that day, because they could do either method.
Would you like a minute to discuss at the table? Okay.
Give us just a minute. Seconds more. We think we have an answer, but we're just double checking something.
Okay. You ready?
Debbie, do you have anything quickly, or are we okay? Hang on a minute. Okay, we need one more minute, please.
Okay.
So that's fine. The fact that the record exists signifies that somebody used it, and as long as the record says how that signature was created. Their system does well, what she said, there are two options. So we know that they either use their pen or use their computer, which is fine. Because we know the options of how that was created.
One more minute. One more minute.
We are ready. So we are okay with, if everybody's okay with this, what we would like to do is propose that we send it back to writers, but that we approve it in the intent. And the intent is that there be a way that we know what the method is, or methods that would have been used to capture. And so I don't know whether that would need to go here or where, but we need to know that there is a system in place that says, in order to have this parent signature, either they use their code or they did this. And we understand what you're saying, it doesn't print out that way.
Yeah.
But we do need to capture that somewhere, so.
Can I just ask why you need to know that piece of information?
It's our way of verifying that you are actually capturing a parent signature or a guardian signature or somebody's, that you're not just kind of going in and, you know, that you don't just have somebody going in and filling it out all the time. So.
Okay. But then it would have my initials instead of the parent's initials in our system.
And if it had your initials, that's fine. We get where you're coming from, but we do need to be able to verify that it really was whoever it is that signed that child in. And so even if your system won't print it out that way, somehow we need to be able to verify that your system works in a way that
these are the methods.
that this is actually verifying it. And so what I'm saying is, in theory, we're on board with you. Your system won't do it, then we just need to find a different way to verify it.
There's a comment from Head Start ECAP.
Yeah, so my understanding is that Dell has sort of semi-approved or recommended a certain list of electronic attendance things. And my suggestion is that Dell do some research with those recommended companies or whatever that thing is to figure out how it is that we figure that out. Because it probably is in there, but if it isn't in there, that's not necessarily something we can fix. So, I mean, I just, since this is coming down from on high, I think that some of that work should probably be done at Dell to figure out where we do that reporting.
I guess my other question through this whole kind of section is for the ECAP and Head Start programs that run via school districts, especially ones that do school bus transportation. They're using the process that the elementary schools use in terms of making sure that kids are delivered from a bus driver to a staff person, the staff person to the classroom, and they're using the school district attendance records. And so I'm needing a way to do the times of arrival and going away, and those staff folks noting that, but I don't know that, I'm sure most of the school districts use the same attendance system, so it would kind of go back to what Katie's saying, like okaying some of those systems and ways, and I just want it to be noted that school districts do it a little bit differently.
Can I ask for 30 seconds?
Yes.
So we are okay with removing 5B because we think that it is implied with 4B, which we've already approved. So we would remove 5B.
Okay. All right, let's take consensus on subpoint 5, language as is, with the removal of subpoint B. All right, family homes ready to go, 5s, licensing 5s, parents 5s, Head Start ECAP 5s, and center-based all 5s. All right, good job. All right, subpoint 6 references compliance with requirements for working connections and other subsidy programs. You ready to take consensus on subpoint 6? Head Start ECAP's ready to go with 5s. Licensing 5s. Family home 5s. Parents 5s. Center-based has a comment.
We do. So on 6, as it reads, it sounds like everyone would need to do this, but what if you don't have any subsidized children or don't? So could we say if applicable? Because I don't need to follow all this if I don't have children that have subsidy or working connections or seasonal.
Okay, so the question is, if you are not participating in any of the listed programs, can we include if applicable in the language? Licensing?
Sure.
All right. So we had 5s all the way around with that granted center-based. All 5s? All right, very good. Reach consensus on subpoint 6. And that covers that section, so very good. All right. Next one is child records.
All right, so good. 0460 child records. Everyone there? Okay, so this was subgroup negotiated. Now is up for full consensus. So child records number 1. An early learning provider must keep current individualized enrollment and health records for all children, including enrolled children of staff, updated annually or more often as health records are updated. The child's record must be kept in a confidential manner in an area easily accessible to staff. A child's parent or guardian must be allowed access to all records for his or her own child, at a weight of 4. Let's see, so all of this is included in it, or no, that's all 2 now? Okay, the new 2, each child's enrollment record must include the following: A, the child's birth date; B, an enrolled child's parent or guardian information, including name, phone numbers, address, and contact information for reaching the family while the child is in care; C, emergency contacts. If no emergency contact is available, a written and signed emergency contact plan may be accepted. D, names. D, names, phone numbers, and addresses of persons authorized to pick up enrolled children. E, a plan for special or individual needs of children, if applicable, including parent or guardian signature pursuant to WAC 0300. F, signed parent or guardian permissions pursuant to 0450 as applicable for 1, field trips, transportation and bathing, and 2, water activities including swimming pools or other outdoor bodies of water. I think it's 3, photo, video, or surveillance activities. And then G, the beginning and end enrollment date for children no longer in the early learning program's care. H, a parent or guardian approved plan for use of physical restraint and evidence of parental notification pursuant to 0490. I, any expulsion information, documentation, and steps taken to avoid expulsion. J, termination of services, documentation, and communication. And K, notification of child's developmental screening information given to the child's parent or guardian, a weight of 6. Number 3, each child's health record, in addition to parts A through E of subsection 2 of this section, must be available to staff when needed for medical administration or emergencies, a weight of 7. Okay, 4, a health record is required for every child who's enrolled and counted in early learning programs capacity. It must include A, immunization record pursuant to 0210, subsection 1. B, the child's health history, including any known health conditions, and the child's individual care plan, if any. C, a medication authorization administration log pursuant to WAC 0215, if applicable. D, documentation of special medical procedure training by parent or guardian, if applicable. E, medical and dental care provider names and contact information if the child has providers. If the child has no medical or dental provider, the parent or guardian must provide a written plan for medical or dental injury or incident. F, dates of the child's last physical exam and dental exam if available. G, consent to seek medical care and treatment of the child in the event of an injury or illness signed by the child's parent or guardian. H, signed parent or guardian permission for visiting health professionals providing direct service to the individual children at the early learning program. I, an incident or injury report that include the date and description of the child's incident or injury. 2, treatment provided to the child while in care. 3, the names of the early learning program staff providing the treatment. 4, evidence that a copy of the incident or injury report was supplied to the child's parent or guardian. And J, documentation that provider has reported incidents of food poisoning or reportable contagious disease per DOH guidelines, a weight of 5. Okay. So move up to subsection 1 at a weight of 4, and I'll measure consensus on subsection 1. How long? 2 minutes? All right, a team caucus for 2 minutes. All right, we'll add 1 more minute to the clock for centers. Okay, looks like they're ready anyways. Parents, do you need more time? All right, we'll do 1 more minute on the clock for Team Caucus. Parents, do you need some more time? All right, we'll put 2 more minutes on the clock for parents. Parents, how are we doing? Do you need more time? Okay.
Ready? Okay. We have a couple questions. And the questions are, let's see, since we're in 460, under 2E, it references the WAC 300. And on that one there, it's weighted of 5. Oh, just one second. It's weighted of a 6 here. And then in 0300, it's weighted of 5. So it seems like that's a double ding. And then also, it's coming, just one second. 450, it's weighted a 5. And also here, it's weighted a 6. And one more. Oh, and we reached consensus on 300 and 450. And then also in 2H, it references 490. We haven't reached consensus on that. And it's weighted high in 490, but I didn't write what the weight was. But here in 460, it's weighted as 6. I'm getting so confused, but one more thing. Oh, and we had reached on 490 or 250? Okay, then also on 215, we reached consensus, and it was weighted, and it's weighted here also. And I think I'm done. Thank you.
So I do believe that I hear the point, but I think that what's going to happen between now and February is a crosswalk of all the weights, because the intent is not to double ding people, but on the other hand, this is a specific section of requiring a child's record. The others are specific to, restraint or whatever, or special needs plan. So that's why they ended up with with weights in both places. But I do believe the intent is to go back through and see where it is being hit twice. Because it may be that we leave it here and we take the weight off for that piece of the plan or whatever. One way or another, they won't be hit twice. So at this point, my suggestion would be that we move forward with the intent and capture the idea that there are duplications of weights that need to be addressed.
So Lori, if you could make that note for us, I guess at the end of 2, where the weight sits. We'll keep that in mind. And as Judy said, I think it's consistent across the board. We need to make sure that wherever the record keeping, the documentation sits, that weight, it doesn't double with the policy, the practice. Centers, you also asked for team caucus, so I'm going to open up the floor to you if you have any suggestions or if you're ready to move forward.
So our comments are on some of these on 2, I think starting E and down. Some of these should say if applicable, because some of they're not going to have, we may not have field trip permission slip forms or physical restraint information or expulsion. All that stuff should be if applicable, because it's not going to be in every child's file.
So is there, oh, go ahead.
Looking at 2D, it says names, phone numbers, and addresses of persons authorized to pick up enrolled children, and I'm not sure why we need to also collect an address if it's just someone who comes once or twice to pick up.
Okay, before we comment on that, can we just make sure we address the first comment on if applicable? So I'm wondering if your suggestion is to put it where it makes sense or just put it at the top? At the top. Okay, so let's wait for Lori. Yeah, I think we can put it in the intro language of 2.
I guess I have a problem with putting it in the intro language, because then it makes it sound like, if I don't know the child's birth date, I don't need it. But I think that there could be a formatting thing where the things that truly are, if applicable, would all fall under that at some point. But some of these things are absolutely necessary.
Yeah. So I hear centers agreeing with that, which means that Lori will go back to the comment, if that's okay. We'll put that in the intent bubble. Okay. So while Lori's typing that, let's go back to D. The question about why you need addresses of the persons authorized to pick up the enrolled children. And Family Home had a comment.
I have the same concern with D about the addresses of people authorized to pick up children. Sometimes parents don't even know that, and a lot of providers get written up for not having that address. The other thing with 2 is I was going to sidebar with licensing, but I would like to clarify that water activities does not include a sprinkler. Is that your understanding?
Yep, and we actually defined water activities November, and it did not include sprinklers. So the proposal on the table is to strike and addresses of persons, and addresses for D, and addresses. We'll look to licensing to see if you have a response.
We're good.
Okay. All right, any other comments on 2 before we measure consensus? Okay, so we actually didn't take consensus yet on any of it, so let's go back up to 1 really quick. Let's measure consensus on 1 at a weight of 4. Okay, family home, all 3s. Licensing, all 5s. Head Start, ECAP, all 5s. Centers, all 3s. Parents, 1 5 and the rest 4s. So we had comments from family home and centers.
This weight is too high. For certain parts of this, like if we don't do it exactly annually, we could get a 4, and that's just too high.
Okay, we've made that note. Centers? Okay, same comment, but it has reached consensus. We'll keep that in there. So I'll wait for the note before we move on to number 2. Okay, so that note's been made on number 1. So we'll go to number 2. What we did here is we made an intent bubble to make sure that those that are truly just if applicable will be added. The Del Tech writers will do that. We also removed and addresses for persons authorized to pick up enrolled children. So I'll measure consensus on all of 2 at a weight of 6. So measuring consensus on number 2. Family home, all 5s. Licensing, all 5s. Head Start, ECAP, all 5s. We're on number 2. Yes, we got you. Yeah, this is one where most likely the weight will stay here at the records, and we'll remove the weights where the practice or the policy has a weight, so it doesn't get double dinged. That's something we're going to do across the board for all records compared to policies and practice. So something that we'll work with Del on between now and February, but that's also on the agenda for all of you to look at in February. So with that, I'm waiting on centers and parents for your consensus on number 2. We're measuring consensus still on number 2. Parents are all 4s. So just waiting on centers.
So we think the weight is too high, and if you look at number 4 in this same section with all of that documentation is a 5, we feel like this should be a 5 as well.
Okay, so centers are proposing a 5. Do we need a team caucus to discuss that? All right, we'll do a 1-minute team caucus to discuss the proposed weight of 5 for number 2.
Licensing's ready whenever anybody else is. So licensing's response to that is that these are critical pieces of the record, and we want to be able to do a safety plan if necessary. When you're looking at special needs or getting permission for field trips or those kinds of things. So we believe the weight should stay up. And really aren't willing to give on that, especially given that we're going to be comparing them to the other areas anyway. So if that can't be agreed to, then we would propose that we move forward with the language and worry about the weights later.
So centers agree that there are some of those things, and I see that you guys are picking out things, and we're picking out things like if I forget to put a disenrollment date, they disenrolled last week, I'm going to get a 6, a safety plan. Or if I don't have a pickup person's phone number because a parent called and said so-and-so's going to pick up, I don't have that documentation, again, I'm getting a 6. So we're looking at these things that aren't 6s that are in this, and you guys are looking at things that are like, yes, they are. So I think there's a differentiation, there's things in here that are and aren't. So we're trying to protect those things that we don't want to get a safety plan for forgetting to put a disenrollment date for a child that disenrolled yesterday.
So I'm kind of hearing that you would like to do different weights for different subsections. Could I maybe propose okay, so the proposal is to table the weight till February, but to take consensus on the language. All right, we'll go around and hear from teams about that proposal. So it's to measure consensus on language, table the weight. Go ahead.
We would just like to concur with centers that we agree to that.
Okay. Yes, let's measure a consensus on tabling just the weight. All right, great. That's consensus across the board.
So, Tina?
Yes.
It might be possible that later today or tomorrow that we could have a list. We could have divided the list. I mean, I don't want to take the time right now, but I'm just thinking we may not have to wait until February to come back to the weights on this.
Okay. I also asked parents they listed all the different references, so I've asked them to write that down so we have that to reference. Great. So that's consensus on language. We'll table the weight. All right. I think the teams we're waiting on, you're okay with that. So we'll move forward to number 3. Right? All right. Number 3 is on child's health records. Must be available when staff need for a medical administration emergencies, a weight of 7. So measure consensus on number 3. Licensing, all 5s. Head Start ECAPs, all 5s. Centers, all 5s. Family home providers, all 5s. Parents, all 5s. Okay, we'll move to number 4. Okay. Health records are required for every child who's enrolled, and here are all the things that must include. That is a weight of 5. So measure consensus on number 4. Comment from centers.
Under number 4, Lord have mercy, I I think, yes. We noticed that incident is not in our list of definitions. And, you know, we keep telling the parents with the nice form and everything that it's actually just an accident type form. But we'd like to have that defined in our table of what incident means.
Can someone confirm that it's not, you guys have confirmed it's not in the table, the definitions? Okay, we'll add that to the list of definitions for review, incidents. Put that on the board in a second. Any other comments? Are we ready to measure consensus? Judy?
We aren't going to hold up consensus on it, but we do have a bit of a problem with F when it says if available. We don't think if available should be there.
Okay, so you're gonna have a 3, that's what you're saying. All right, we'll make note of that. All right, I'm gonna measure consensus on all of 4 at a weight of 5. Yes, that's how you kept.
Sorry, I'm not understanding E. So I get if they have it, but I don't understand the last sentence. If the child has no medical or dental provider, the parent or guardian must provide a written plan for a medical or dental injury or incident. I'm not sure what I would even need to be expecting from a parent and under what situation.
What would they want you to do if their child were suddenly injured and they have no doctor or no dentist? Would they want you to call 911? Would they want you to, I mean, it really is, what do you, if you don't have a doctor for us to contact?
So maybe just the technical writers making that more clear, like what should you do if something occurs? I mean, that's what you're saying, but that's not what
we
I
want the
read.
parents
Yeah.
to be working with you on what you should do.
Okay, so
if
maybe
that occurs.
just more clear language so we know that that's what it means.
Okay, so we'll have Lori write that comment in the comment bubble, then we have family homes and centers, and then Head Start UCAP. Family home?
On this same section, we have a concern when we care for infants. What if there is no dental possibility of a dental injury or incident for an infant?
Does Lacey want to respond to that?
Our thinking is that when you have these kind of plans in place, it is preparing for the emergency that may happen, and you may not have updated that record, or maybe the child fell and injured their gums badly enough that it could be a dental issue for that child. So we just don't think that this is too much to ask, that either the parent define who their providers are for their child, or they tell you what they want you to do in the event something should happen. And it wouldn't have to be a 911 emergency for you need to know what to be able to do.
Centers and then Head Start UCAP.
Well, I think we're having a little bit of a discussion and we might need a minute, but I think that there's 2 ideas here. One is that the facility or the program has a way of responding to emergency situations that isn't an individualized response. So, and then there's what the parents want you to do. And I think our program response needs to be clear. And then, yes, we also need the information. So what we don't want to do is let it seem like the parent is telling us how we're going to respond if we think that we need a 911 and they're like, we don't want that kind of thing. So we want to...
And we agree with that. this is more for those incidents where you might have picked up the phone and called the child's doctor if you couldn't reach the parent and said, you know, they've broken out with this purple rash, but otherwise they seem fine. It is more in terms of what would the parent want you to do in a standard case when you might otherwise call the doctor or the dentist.
So honestly, we don't call the doctor because
You
that's
may
a
not, but
violation.
some people may. I mean, this
Isn't
is.
that a violation of responsibility with the parent? That's a relationship with the parent and the doctor. The doctor, if we go to the emergency room, that might be a time where we want the doctor's name because that doctor could talk to the other doctor, but we don't
Okay,
call
so
the
for
doctor.
the purpose of this whack, because I'm not going to get into whether or not it's legal for you to call the doctor, for the purpose of this whack, the intent is that you know who the providers are. And if the parent is telling you, we don't have a provider, but if something were to happen, then I want you to go to the emergency room, or I want you to go to urgent care, or I don't want you to do anything because I don't believe in medical care, and so therefore call me. And so all we're asking is that you know what the parent's wishes are if there is nobody there, not that you don't follow your own protocols if it's a 911 or a whatever, but rather that you know what the parent's desire is for their child in the meantime. And it does two things. One, it provides you with a kind of a baseline of what the parent wants. It also is educating that parent that their child needs ongoing medical care.
Hattori Cap.
So we're in agreement with the centers. We were talking at our table and could not imagine a scenario in which we would contact a doctor. That just does not happen. It would be completely opposite what we could do related to HIPAA and the parent responsibility and all that. So we would call the emergency person or the parent. My other comment here is that when I look at this section, I look at section 2 and 3, and I realize that any violation of these sections would also necessarily be a violation of number 1. So it's not really just a 7 or just a 6. It's really an 11 or a 10. So I'm wondering if there's, if we're going to go back and look at weights. The new section of number 1 is really about the confidential manner and accessibility to the parents. If it's just that part, I could see that being weighted as a 4. But if the first section about the individual enrollment is there, then we're going to get weighted twice on any violation of the ones below. Because it says that you have to keep updated records, and so if you're not keeping if there's something in the sections down below that's not updated or correct or in the file, then you are in violation of number 1 as well.
I would go back to the fact that all of this has to be crosswalked. It just has to be. I recognize that some of these things may be being dinged twice and maybe not.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that this was in the notes.
That it gets captured,
so
yes.
that that's definitely something that we go back to, because this is so obvious to me because it's actually right below it.
All right, so while Lori's adding the note about the weights, I want to go back to the section E and see if anyone has a proposed change. It sounds to me like striking a portion of it or all of it, but I want to hear from the groups.
I'm just wondering if the intent of that is to find out whether the child first of all, whether the child has medical or dental care, and if not, what does the parent do for that child's medical and dental care? And if that's the case, then we would want a written statement by the caregiver parent about how the child receives medical and dental care. Because there are other places that say in an emergency call 911. That's what we want to have happen if there is an emergency. Otherwise, we're calling the parent if the child is showing signs of illness or has had an incident. We're not calling a doctor. I don't know if that.
We have had providers need to call a doctor, and it is not a HIPAA violation to call a doctor and provide information. Also, where I see this probably playing out more than anything is the dental. If a child falls and knocks a tooth out and you can't reach the parent, it isn't necessarily a 911 call, but it may be that you need to get that child to the dentist so the tooth can be placed back in. I mean, there are situations where you need that information. And yes, part of it is to find out that the child is receiving care, but part of it also is that in that rare occasion that you would have the information necessary to be able to respond to a child's needs, especially if you can't reach the parent, which unfortunately happens often.
So now that we've had some time to clarify the intent, I wonder if a team caucus is needed, and potentially we can look at a revised language. Maybe groups can think about revised language. I don't think we can move forward without clarifying this, unless you want to table it. So option 1 is taking a team caucus to try to find some new language for E now that we have clarified intent. Option 2 is table just E and have Dell Talk Writers work on it. Okay, we'll do a 3-minute team caucus.
I mean, I would say you could actually say, if the child has no medical provider, the parent needs to be informed, they do it all in one, unless they provide guidance otherwise. We do not want to have 50 this common one plan. Although, you know, one of the challenges is there's a lot of leeway in the level of emergency here too, right? There are emergencies where somebody just, you know, hurt in 2 hours.
30 seconds.
I mean, I don't know what all. Say that they break the finger.
All right, we're adding 2 more minutes to the clock.
It's updated on the website, we just have to send it again.
Is licensing ready? Okay. Head Start ECAP?
Yeah, we have a suggestion.
Okay, great.
So we would suggest that we change this to say medical and dental care provider names, oops, just moved, I can't need to find it again, and contact information if the child has providers. If this is not provided, parents will be informed that the provider will call 911 in the event of an emergency, unless the parent provides a written alternate plan, right? I just want to, we have a concern that we don't want to have a million of these special plans in the files, right? So, and since the default for us will always be call 911 if you can't reach the parent, that's what we would be, to let the parent know that that would be our alternative if we don't have that information. And this would also encourage them to give you that information, right?
Tina? Licensing is fine with that, but we would also suggest that maybe we make a note for implementation that says, without this information, 911 will be, I mean, just so that you don't even have to, the information would be right there on the form.
I would suggest for language that it's step 2, which is we call 911, and then who else do you want us to call? You, who's your doctor, that kind of thing. Because I'm not going to look up their we have to be able to call 911, even, we can't have the parent saying you can't. It's our protection, right? So I don't want to think that I have to look at the parent preference. But I do understand, and we do agree, that having the medical doctor and the dentist information is key. And if we don't have that, we want to know what they think we should be doing after that. So we agreed with E and don't want to get messed up in a bunch of individual plans.
So the one edit I made with Lori was just to say that you will call 911 in case of emergency. Okay, so let me read it as is, and then we'll measure consensus. So E, medical and dental care provider names and contact information the child has providers. When provider names are not provided, the parent will be informed that the provider will call 911 in case of emergency unless an alternative plan is provided.
I think we all have kind of got the intent, but that isn't quite it. 911 can always be called, but it's just that that's what the alternate plan will be if the parent doesn't give you one. So it's, I would say that the writers just need to tweak it a little bit.
Okay. So we'll let Lori to catch up. So to Dell Tech writers. Sure, parents, centers would like to do a sidebar. Are you guys open to that? Yes. Okay, all right, we'll put 1 minute on the clock for the sidebar. We're adding 1 more minute on the clock for the sidebar. So centers and parents, do you want to report back? Licensing has a comment, if you want to hear it first.
You want me to go first? Our suggestion would be that we change E to say what facility or in case of a medical emergency, what facility would you want contacted for your child? You know, whether that be an emergency room, an urgent care facility, whatever that may be, that way it captures whether they have a clinic or they don't have a clinic. They have, that the parent is saying which hospital they would prefer or which whatever they would prefer. And I mean, we don't have the language cleaned up, obviously, but the intent would be, let's find out where the parent would prefer to go, just like they do at schools in terms of what hospital you want your kid to go to if they fall off the playground. So you still want medical and dental provider names? Not necessarily. What we're saying now is, how do you want us, where do you want us to contact in the event of a medical emergency that doesn't necessarily require 911, because if you call 911, they're going to take them wherever. But
Okay, so say that health record for every child who's enrolled and counted in the program's capacity must include medical, dental provider names and contact information, or what facility the parent would prefer for non-emergency treatment.
Or just for treatment.
For treatment.
Yeah, I do. I'm okay with this, but I do find that the center argument about this resonates, that you want to make sure that it's clear that we can always call 911. Yes. And I'm not sure that that's 100% clear.
Would you be okay with this language? Should we make sure that the intent bubble for the Delta?
Yeah, as long as we have that
intent.
intent. I mean, I think we're all sort of in agreement about what we're after here, but all of this is about both serving the parent and the child's needs, but also protecting ourselves in the event of an emergency, doing what we think is going to save a child.
And as we've been talking about this, we've been talking about all these scenarios and everything, but in reality, we are really talking about a child's record here. We are not talking about your practice. We're talking about what are you gathering from the parent. And so I don't think it is implying what you can or cannot do. It is only saying this is what the parent is reporting to you that their preferences are.
Okay, I'm going to measure consensus just on E. Just on E. The language here, knowing that the intent is that you can always use your own practice for emergency situations. So measuring consensus on just E. Again, knowing that the Dell Tech writers will clean it up. It's just the part above, so we can remove when providers' names are not provided. Yeah. So just the medical dental care provider names and contact information, or what facility parents would prefer for treatment.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to measure consensus on just E. Licensing all fives. Family home, do you have a comment?
So did you take out the doctor and the dentist?
Yes, we took out doctor and dentist. What? Oh, they're still above, but it says or. All right, so I'll measure consensus again on E. Family home providers, all fives. Licensing, all fives. Parents. Come back to you, Head Start ECAP. Do you need a team caucus or official sidebar? No? Okay, centers. All fives? Head Start ECAP? I didn't see it. Okay. Parents, I'll come back to you. I didn't get a full. Parents. So we have all fives and 1-4 for parents. So we're just waiting a Head Start ECAP who seems like they need a minute. Head Start ECAP, do you need more time? I take that as a yes. We'll put another minute on for Head Start ECAP. Head Start ECAP, how are we doing? You're good? All right, we're gonna measure consensus for you guys on E. All right, great. So now we're gonna go back and measure consensus on all of 4. This is the one that we're gonna, did we already agree to? All right, so I'm going to measure consensus on all of 4 now at a weight of 5. Is that a comment? Okay. Centers.
Okay, on J at the bottom, the documentation about per DOH guidelines, can we put when applicable on there? What?
When would it not be applicable?
Like, for example, we have had children that go to the doctor and then they send a note from their doctor saying, we've already reported this to DOH, and so then we know we don't have to report it because the doctor's already reported it.
Okay. All right, so we'll add when not otherwise reported. Does that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Laurie. All right, then I will try again to measure consensus of all of 4 at a weight of 5. All right, family home providers, all 3s. Licensing, we have 5s and 2 4s and 2 3s. Parents, come back to you when you're ready. Head Start ECAP, all 5s. Centers, all 5s. Okay, so there's 3s, so we'll start with your comments on 3s, parents.
So I guess my only concern would be, granted, I understand that it's up to the facility's judgment call on whether it's life-threatening or needs to be called 911, but if that's their go-to, because let's say this family is homeless and they haven't found a provider in their area, the hardship to that family to keep getting, you know, that bill from that extra expense. That's all.
Okay, thank you. We also had concerns in licensing. There's some 3s.
So ours still goes back to the F, dates of the child's last physical exam and dental exam, if available. We think that the if available shouldn't be there because in the event of a sudden illness or medical condition, it can be critical for first responders to know when the child was last seen, especially if it was recent. But we're
Which
not
one
going to
is-
block consensus.
Where is that from?
It's F.
F, thank you. Okay, family home providers.
First of all, we have an issue with H little I. We want to make sure that it's noted that we want a definition. Sorry.
That was my fault, sorry, Lori. Kat, is it
The definition
one
of
or this one
incident.
that you have?
The definition of
one?
incident, yeah.
Okay.
That one.
I'll wait. Well, let's wait for Lori, but I just want to make sure.
So H, small I.
I think it's just I at that point, yeah.
Okay. That it was discussed earlier before all this, that there was going to be clarification on what the word incident means. And the reason for this is, you know, kids get lots of bumps and bruises and scrapes and all that kind of stuff. And I don't want to have to do a report every time I, you know, wash a boo-boo and put a Band-Aid on it. The other thing is we feel that the weight is too high.
Okay. Oh, great. That was 0460. Nice job, guys. That was a tough one, but we got through it right before lunch. All right, so our next one is 0465. Let's just see how many there are really quick. Okay. Let's try this one before lunch. 0465.
All right, 0465 is on retaining facility and program records. All right, subpoint 1 is an early learning provider must keep all records required in this chapter for a minimum of 3 years unless otherwise indicated. That has a weight of 1. New subpoint 2, all records from the previous 12 months for children that are currently enrolled must be kept in an easily accessible manner for the department or other state agencies' review. Easily accessible records include A, child records must be easily accessible, B, staff records must be easily accessible on-site or kept in the program's administrative office for department review, and C, attendance records must be easily accessible on-site or kept in the program administrative office for department review. That has a weight of 4. Subpoint 3, records older than 12 months must be provided within 2 weeks of a written request by the department. Has a weight of 1. Subpoint 4, an early learning provider must keep the following records available for department review. A non-discrimination policy. B, strengthening families program self-assessment or an equivalent assessment. C, furniture, sleep, and play equipment forms and specifications. D, chromated copper arsenate test results, if applicable. E, annual fire inspection by qualified fire professional. F, annual inspection of chimney, wood stove, and fireplace. G, monthly inspection to identify fire hazards and elimination of such hazards. H, monthly testing of smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. I, monthly fire extinguisher inspection and annual maintenance. J, menus 6 months pursuant to CACFP. K, food temperature logs pursuant to CACFP, if applicable. L, child incident and illness logs. M, medication administration logs. N, vaccination records for pets or animals housed at the early learning program. O, lead and copper testing results. P, private well and septic system inspection and testing results, if applicable. Q, center or family home cleaning schedule. R, alternative cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting products. S, cleaning log for large area rugs or carpets. T, pesticide use 7 years. U, monthly site visit from nurse consultant, if applicable. V, Tacoma smelter inspection results, if applicable. W, restraint and expulsion policy. X, daily schedule. Y, curriculum planning time. Z, parent or guardian handbook. AA, documents from department visits, inspections, monitoring, compliance agreements, and safety plans. BB, waivers or variances from department rules, if applicable. CC, written emergency preparedness plans and drills. DD, transportation policy. EE, car insurance policy. FF, termination of services policy. GG, consistent care policy. And HH, health policy. All of these with a weight of 1. And that is the full section. So going back up to the top on this topic of retaining facility and program records, subpoint 1 with a weight of 1.
Could we have one minute to talk?
Yes.
More than 1 minute to talk.
Okay. 3 minutes? Okay, we'll put 3 minutes on the clock. Okay, are we ready to take consensus? Was 3 minutes enough? Are you ready? Okay. All right, so let's take consensus on subpoint 1 with a weight of 1. Okay? All right, family home, thank you, all 5s. Parents, all 5s. Head Start ECAP has a comment?
Are we on number 1?
Yes. Number 1 with a weight of 1. Okay, all 5s. Center-based 5s and licensing 5s. Okay, very good. All right, subpoint 2 has a weight of 4. All right, family home has 3s. Licensing, is that a block? Okay.
We would like attendance records to be 5 years, and we're noting that somewhere else they just put it behind it, and so we would ask that 5 years be added to attendance records, and that has to do with subsidies.
Okay. And so that language is added in subpoint 2 or and applies to the subpoints below?
It would just be for C, 2C.
Okay, 2C.
It would say 2C attendance records, 5 years.
Okay. Family home, did you want to share your comment?
A question for technical. How far back can the auditors go on our attendance records?
5 years.
For Working Connections childcare?
I believe it is 5 years. That's why we're suggesting 5 years to.
Okay, do we know that for sure that it's 5 years? Because my understanding was only 3. They can back bill us 5 years?
We can double check that, but I believe it is 5 years unless that's recently changed.
I know with family childcare, I'm pretty sure our contract says 3. And then we have other, oh, never mind, it's a different one.
Okay, so we've asked for a review to add in additional language there. Yes.
Years. The state may be 3, but the federal requirement is 5 years.
Okay. So we'll table that then while we get review. Is that?
No, that is the answer.
Right, but your request to add in 5 years is what is on the table right now, and that would go back to Dell for review and approval.
5 years is what Dell is recommending for attendance records because of the federal requirement. So we need to have it in there.
So you're looking for alignment with the federal requirement?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so with that proposal to add in the clarification to subpoint C under subpoint 2, can we take consensus on the addition of that language?
So I have one, we have one sort of comment that this reads a little weird because number 2 is about records from the previous 12 months, and then the language down in attendance records is about 5 years, which is really sort of related to number 3. So I wonder if maybe we either move the 5 years down to number 3 or something. It just doesn't.
That would be fine.
Okay.
let Lori work some magic here.
Kat? Kat?
Head Start, ECAP, can you restate that so we can capture it?
So get rid of the 5 years part on C, but include it down in 3.
Attendance records,
Yeah. So,
under 3.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
add
for
another
5 years.
sentence in number 3 saying attendance records must be kept for 5 years. Yeah, it just doesn't
That's
make
right.
any sense to me,
Yep.
It's, or actually to Karen, who pointed this out.
Okay.
And can we just add that we think this whole section's going to need cleaning up a little bit? I mean, we've got a whole lot of easily accessibles that don't necessarily need to be there, so.
Okay.
And
But we
we
can-
also wanted to point out that according to the subsidy WAC, attendance records do have to be kept for 5 years.
Okay.
As well as,
Yeah, I'd like to propose that we break for lunch. And we'll come back, we'll start back up here. I want to recommend you guys talk with the group that's been out in 0100 and hear about how that's going and provide your input there.
Nothing.